every Wednesday from 9:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Cigarette Radio 94.7 FM, Abuja.
You're welcome.
He's taking the introductory part to domestic violence.
Yes.
Then he will take consequences.
And it will
We'll just interchange and...
yes, Zara is joining. Okay, me and Zara will do it.
Ready when you are.
1 minute.
I even I can make that seat over there.
Which seat?
Make like this.
Ready when you are.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so beyond clients who approach my office to lay bare their plans, those who ordeal I can't refer to for regard to confidentiality. I've experienced terrible cases of women who go to lay complaint at the office of the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons NAPTIP. While I was at NAPTIP for a client's case, I witnessed cases of other women bearing their hearts out to tears while recounting in agony the incidences of domestic violence they suffer. This is a piece written by Ajibola Bello Esquire. It's titled Arresting the Menace of Domestic and Spousal Violence. That is what we'll be talking today on Women Voices. And don't forget that it's the International Women's Week. Of course, it's on Friday, but we're owning the month because International Mother's Day is about on Sunday or something. So just leave this month for us. It is Women's Month. And of course, I have Barrister Jibola in the building, and of course, Zara Abdukabir. Please, Zara, how are you doing this morning?
I'm fine. Good morning.
Okay, so I also have a delectable lady who would be introducing herself too.
Mariam El Yakub, I'm a lawyer as well.
All right, okay,
Yes.
you're very much welcome
Thank
to the program. Okay, so first of all, I would actually be talking about what's domestic violence. It's not as if a lot of us don't know. We're going to be starting from Barrister Jibola. A lot of us know domestic violence. In fact, me, if I hear domestic violence, I say, why beat him? That's actually what I would first. So I would want you to, go really deeply into what domestic violence is. That's apart from the, generalization that the notion that we have.
All right, so good morning. Thank you for having me and having us, myself and Miriam. It's a pleasure being here. I should start by congratulating the women for the International Women's Week, and rightly so. Perhaps I should, on behalf of the men, hand over the month to you like you requested for.
Thank you.
So you do have the month. Domestic violence is a phrase made of two words, domestic and then violence. Domestic simply, if we contextualize the word, is looking at an idea of a place that is private, secluded. And then violence apparently is what is defined in law in itself. So when we look at domestic violence in Nigerian parlance or contextually, we have a statute that has attempted to define the word violence. It doesn't define domestic violence, but it defines violence. Now, as I mentioned, domestic is a secluded space, within the home, within an environment, within a space. It could be a room, it could just be a community, it could be, within a family, within two people, within a group of people. So the idea is that word domestic is one word on its own. But then violence as defined by the Act, that's Violence Against Persons Act, which was enacted in 2015. It says violence means any act or attempted act which causes or may cause any person physical, sexual, psychological, verbal, emotional, or economic harm, whether this occurs in private or public life, whether it occurs in peace, time, or in conflict situations. So you see how broadened the word is. Violence doesn't necessarily mean until someone's blood is spilled. It doesn't necessarily mean until someone's head is chopped off. It doesn't mean until someone is battered by 10 people or the tire put on somebody's neck, around somebody's neck. It could mean a variety of things. It starts from a simple situation as pinning somebody's ear in the morning every time, and you do it constantly to the point that the person shrinks into fear. It goes as far as beating somebody up every day with belts, with whoever is doing the beating. It could be emotional in the sense that you could wake up in the morning and roll on the floor and you're wailing, and then the other party who is not even touching you is in distress. It could be a situation where you make someone dependent on you solely for everything they need, such that without you they can't breathe, they can't. I know this notion of say, you're the love of my life, without you I can't breathe. Sometimes literally it is exactly how it is. You can't. Some people hold you to the point that you can't breathe truly. You're feeding, you're eating, you're sleeping, you're going out, you need 1 naira, you need 5 naira. It is that person who provides it for you. It's violence as well. You've held that person in servitude, in subjugation, such that without you, that person can't do anything. So violence is very broad. It's so broad. I'm not sure I can cover the entire face of it, but I'm just using all of this wide narrative to explain the concept.
All right, thank you very much. I know you could go on and on. All right, okay, so Zara, you have something to say.
For the sake of time, please, I would like to restrict contribution to just messages. So you can send your messages via SMS or WhatsApp to 081 78000 947. That is 081 78000 947. So my question goes to the beautiful lady in the studio. What are the common causes of domestic violence that we experience today in Nigeria, particularly?
All right. Thank you for having me, and good morning once again. My name is Mariam Yakub, and I'm a lawyer. So just like Mr. Ajibola said earlier, the notion of domestic violence presupposes that there is a relationship between the person at the receiving end and the person meting out the violence, the survivor or the victim. So the causes of domestic violence would necessarily have a bearing on the relationship persons have. So there are definitely various causes of domestic violence, especially in the Nigerian terrain, and also when you're talking about domestic violence in the Nigerian parlance as well. So one of the root causes of domestic violence is chiefly over dependence or dependence on victims depending on the person meting out the violence. So when you have a situation whereby, for example, in the family, you have, since we all agreed at the beginning that it's a women's month, you have a situation whereby a woman in a family is not working. She's overtly dependent on the man for her feeding, well-being, general well-being, even for the children as well. So in those kind of situations, because she's overly dependent on that, you could see issues of abuse being met on her by the man and all of that. So basically, factors that could contribute to domestic violence include, power dynamics, which is what I'm talking about in this instance. So because the man has power over the woman in this scenario that I painted,
physical power as well.
Yeah, it could be physical power as well, mental power as well, because the man provides for the family. He's in charge of virtually everything. So this power dynamics comes into play. So when he, for example, decides to say, "Oh, I'm going to slap you for being not being submissive to me," she has nothing to say. And one of the questions people usually ask is, why won't you leave if you're being violated or if you're being abused? Why won't you leave? So, and that is where you now see power dynamics come into play, because the person's life is intricately tied to the abuser. So it is not a question of why won't you leave, but rather, if they leave, what would they do? How would they survive? So that is just one of the basic root causes. And then you also have issues of low self-esteem. So I bring up self-esteem issue because as a lawyer, I've been faced with a lot of issues where, for example, women are the breadwinners in the family, or they're the providers in the family and all of that. And because the men cannot take the fact that the woman is providing, then before you know it, they begin to beat her, slap her, met verbal abuse, hurling invectives at the woman and all of that. So you see, this is an issue of low self-esteem, because the person feels, or the abuser feels, oh, I am not living up to what I'm supposed to do. What can I do to affect?
To prove a point.
To prove a point. Thank you. That's a better way of putting it. What can I do to prove a point? So you have this kind of low self-esteem issues that are causing. So I also think that one of the other root causes, which we have, especially in Nigeria, is issues of unresolved trauma.
Okay.
So when I talk about unresolved trauma, I believe we were having a discussion earlier about people who have been abused. You know, they grew up with the mentality that this is how life is.
Yes.
So because they have not been able to resolve the trauma they had, it becomes a part of them, and they go on, you know, messing up the same thing that was meted on them when they were probably kids, or maybe just at one stage of their growth in life and all of that. So you see, these issues of unresolved trauma, it can be anybody. So let's say, for instance, I am a victim of domestic violence, or you know, and I grew up, I eventually have a family of my own. Before you know it, I begin to act like people who dealt with me in the past, and not knowing that, oh, these are unresolved issues in my head, not necessarily because of who I am. You understand? So this is one of the causes of domestic violence, I believe. And one thing I would also like to add is the fact that, which is a very general issue, it's societal norms that have been accepted.
Yes.
So when I talk about societal norms, I talk about traditional and cultural practices that are deemed accurate, you know. So in some kind of persons who believe that, oh, beating a woman, it's normal, you have to put her in line.
In
You
line,
have to
yes,
discipline
because
her.
you're the head.
So
Sort of.
yeah, they even have cultural practices where you have particular bodies of women you should beat. You understand? So it's part of cultural, societal norms that people are going to accept. You also have instances of parents beating their children to stupor in the name of discipline. And we believe in Nigeria that, oh, spare the rod,
Spoil the child, yeah.
So these are issues because you don't know the level you stop or the level you get to, and then it becomes abuse instead of discipline. So these are basically, I think I've been able to capture the causes in my own opinion based on, you know, holistic of domestic violence we have.
I should add to
especially
that,
in Nigeria. Yeah.
to that esteem thing, directly connected to that. So, for instance, the example of the woman being the breadwinner, the man is suffering from inferiority complex.
Yes.
And in order to sort of try to get around that, he oppresses the woman. So if the woman, for instance, spends money on fixing things and like, where did you go to? And like, you come back home and then your husband is asking you where you go to, and you're trying to just explain that, the man feels like, yeah, so because you pay the rent or you think you can come to this house anyhow, and then slapping just goes on and then the beating goes on. So and then inferiority on the part of the woman. So this complex thing could also play a direct role.
Let's not forget.
Okay.
Very quickly, I know we have time limits, but it's also important to know the violence. So as lawyers, you know, he slaps the spouse, she slaps the spouse, you know, and there are times when parents have to force children, you know, to watch heated arguments between the parents. You know, so imagine
And that
the
plays on the
psychological,
psyche of kid.
Imagine the
Going forward, unresolved in the head of those children,
Yeah.
they end up treating their own spouse the same way they saw their parents treat each other.
I remember I had one experience. I heard somebody saying that because his dad beats his mom, so he definitely is going to beat his wife to put her in place.
That's orientation.
Yeah. So
The
imagine the
orientation,
kind of orientation people have from their own family. So just like we said initially, domestic presupposes that there is a relationship. And it means that it starts from the close relationship you have. It may not necessarily be among spouse or parents. It can even be extended family relatives. So sometimes these things, but it's eventually definitely starts from the home, you know. So
So let us just quickly go through, because we do not have so much time on our hands and all of that. And to add to what he said, I wanted to, in fact, you hit the nail on the head. I wanted to add to it that true finances and some women, I'm not really trying to make excuses.
No.
Some women put it on their face.
Yeah, true.
Oh, you they can't ask me where you're going, where I'm just coming from. I'm the one providing for the house and all of that.
true.
And then when she gets a feedback in terms of physical abuse, she's afraid to report or leave so that it won't look as if because I'm the one
provoked it.
Yeah, oh, thank you so much. You always have the right word. You know, so that it won't look as if I'm, you know. So that takes us to, you know, gaslighting and all of that.
True.
And I would like to go to the consequences of these things. We just look at the now consequences. Before the program, I was discussing with you about some cases of, you know, men abusing their children, sexually abusing their children, sexual exploitation, and a whole lot of that, which will later, and you talked about someone who said, because my dad I watch my dad beat my mom, I will do the same thing. So we're talking about the consequences, the long-term consequences that arise
short-term,
from
long-term.
yes, they're long-term. So let's look at the long-term consequences it would have on both the children, both the society, and all of that. We want us to touch on the consequences.
Okay, so I think the way the society is designed is for us to have a sort of progressive advancement in terms of being better humans, have better family, which will translate into a better community and then a better nation. There's no idea of having a better nation other than having a peaceful coexisting members of that community. So if there is a domestic violence, it has an implication on how the society itself relates with each other. You see how angry people are on the street. You're driving and then somebody is just right next to you, just a small honk, and then the person is already insulting you. You're mad, you're mad from. So you see angry people all over the place. And it's hard for us to interact as human. It's hard for us to do business together. A man is already feeling subjugated when he's transacting with a woman who is in a place of power. You go and apply for a job as a man, and the person you meet to interview you is a female, and then you feel like, another example of my wife is here, and then you feel like, can I even work under this one? So they have all those things that affect societal relationship from the economic perspective, the financial perspective, interrelational issues, and then how the society grows in the small space that we have. I think in the piece that I wrote, I mentioned how that issue leads to dissolution of marriage. I think it was at 2023, early 2023. I went to the High Court in Guabolade to handle the case, and one of the registrars was telling me, as at that time of the year, I think it was around April 2023, they already have over 700 dockets of cases for dissolution. So it means families are broken. Domestic violence leads to broken homes. That's the first and short-term consequence that we have.
Even if it is not physically broken, the home is already broken. Yes.
So you have, if as at April 2023, you already have 7. That's in Abuja, in High Court of FCT alone, and you're not adding customary court to it, because it means those are marriages that were registered at the Ministry of Interior, the statutory marriages. Those are the ones that are recorded at the High Court. There are several cases. I go to customary court in Gariki to handle a case, and if the cost list comes up, there are close to 7. If there are 7 cases on cost list, 6 of those cases are on dissolution. Maybe one is just some transaction between some random person. Every day, for every time I go to court, 99% of the cases on that cost list is on dissolution.
That's something.
And that's not inclusive of the 700 cases that I mentioned that were already on the docket as at April 2023. So you see, domestic violence have a wider approach on how families are. And if you go and read the work of people like Sigmund Freud, when they're analyzing sociology and societal growth, they say family is the smallest and the basic unit of a society. So if the family is broken, the society is broken. If you can't have a home where the mother, the father, and the children coexist harmoniously without any sort of trouble, nagging, screaming, shouting every day, the child can't go home in peace, the mother can't go home in peace, the father can't go home in peace, it's a problem. So we have a society, a family that is broken, leading to a society that is broken, and then we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, just to add on the consequences, if I have. So I think, domestic violence has lots of consequences, and just like you said, it starts from the family. So if we have broken families, we have a broken society. So there are times you notice that children have learning disabilities. It could be as a result of domestic violence.
They shrink.
They shrink because they are exposed to these ills, and then they shrink. It becomes an issue. They have learning disabilities. They have communication issues. At the end of the day, it becomes a societal problem because you have children who are out there who, so-called future that we have, and they can't even stand for themselves. They can't speak. They can't learn anything because of these issues. So you have academic problem. You also have health issues as well. So there are times when there are times when people's life is cut short because they got pregnant as a result of this domestic violence issues and all of that. So that's it.
increasing death. We have
Okay.
those cases of
Zara?
those with Sinachi and the like.
Yeah.
They're all
Somehow
still
this happens to be a recurring topic on this show, and a lot of times we talk about how women should always speak out. And as she usually says, you can't begin to fight for someone who doesn't want to be fought for. As a matter of fact, there's
Can't
been
cry
a
more
case
than
where
the bereaved.
someone sent a message here. It was a similar topic we were discussing, and the person was like, we can't tell her what to do, or we can't come and scatter her marriage. I think these were the words.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We can't come and scatter her marriage. And sometimes I feel like they are saying that because they feel like, well, we are single, my co-host and I are single.
Single
therefore
Pringle. Single
we
Pringle.
don't know what it takes. I mean, this is violence. Violence is violence, whether or not you are
Yeah,
single.
yeah.
In any case, I think the government has now set up some agencies and departments to tackle this menace. Now, my question is, how practicable is this agencies and departments, in the sense that is there any empowerment program? Because sometimes some people are actually ready to move out, but by the time they sit to think of what you mentioned earlier, that what will I fall back on? Poverty is wicked.
Yes.
What will I fall back on? Who will help me? At least I can feed here. There's been cases where your parents will even tell you, is he not feeding you? Is he not clothing you? Please stay. Is he not just beating you to mind yourself and stuff like that? So how practicable are these bodies?
Yeah.
And also how can they be reached in an event that is a victim and the person wants to reach out? How accessible are they,
agencies.
and how practicable are what they are their services or their aid?
Yeah. Okay. So let me quickly take a bit of that before Miriam adds up to it. In the piece that I wrote, I put it out there that the Violence Against Persons Act, which was enacted in 2015, already made the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons the body to enforce the Violence Against Persons Act. NAPTIP is just somewhere around Zone 5 here in Abuja, and I believe the agency, being a federal agency, is replicable in other parts of the states. They will have state offices. So citizens who feel affected by violence in any form, domestic, societal, state violence, they can go to that agency and report. Now the question you ask is, how efficient are those agencies? How proactive, how responsive are they? I won't lie to you. There's nothing that in as far as it's a Nigerian governmental agency, you're bound to find shortfalls in their responsibility. Even some of the cases that I personally have prosecuted at NAPTIP, I know how draggy it took, how much I have to keep calling. I go there and I see a narration where they'll say, we don't have fuel in our bus.
Yes.
Arrest this person.
Yes.
You think it's only applicable at the police station? No. They'll tell you it will take some days for us to be able to apply for and get fuel into the car for us to go and pick the person who is beating you. I've been there where I saw a lady practically narrating our audio, and then they told her we can't. They'll tell you, okay, before we even go pick the person, we'll have to call him first to tell him to come. It's only when he refuses the invitation, then we'll now go and arrest him. I've seen that happen. So the proactiveness isn't particularly there. I've had situations where a lady called me in the middle of the night, I think around 2 a.m. Typically, I don't take calls from 11 a.m. But I looked at the number. This woman must be in distress for her to call me at 2 a.m. So I picked the call up, and she kept screaming, "Oh, he's beating me, blah, 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 blah." And there was nothing I could do. I can't go to a house at that time of the night, apparently. But if NAPTIP has an helpline, an emergency situation like that, because apparently beatings will be happening at night. The system should have known that most of cases of domestic violence, especially spousal ones, will be happening around that time of 10 p.m. But NAPTIP has closed at 4 p.m. By 4 p.m. they've left. You can't do anything there. So even if you're being beaten at 7 p.m., you have to take that beating until the next morning. So those are some of the problems they have. They don't have an emergency response. I even told the lady to go there in the morning, the next morning. Meet me there at NAPTIP. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it there in the morning, but I told her, and she got there. They couldn't even take her statement. They said until our lawyer comes. This is someone who was beaten through the night into the morning. So we have some of these problems of the agencies not being very efficient. So it requires some political will. It requires them to understand that this is something that involves life and death situations. Someone who's been, you don't have an idea of what the beating is about. It could be with an object and then the person is dead. You know, US has 911. Before anything, your 911 can even dial accidentally by itself. We don't have that. In the course of the person beating you, your phone can quickly send an emergency message, and then NAPTIP will respond. So we've not gotten.
Yes, and even to add to that, do you know, apart from 911, if you call probably a delivery or a food outlet and they notice that there's a way you sound, they will help you.
They trigger it to 911.
Yes, exactly.
Like that.
So there's a synchronization of how these agencies work. If the matter affects NAPTIP, but it's a police line that you have, you hit the police line and you quickly hinted that what I'm having is domestic violence. Even if police can't come immediately, they're supposed to round it and ring it and route it to the NAPTIP's office for them to quickly respond. We don't have all of this.
Yeah,
so
very quickly, because we have. Yes.
The messages.
Yeah, we have to take messages and we don't have any time at all.
So I think the second part of your question is how they can approach these agencies.
Yes.
So with specific regards to the NAPTIP, I wish we have a situation whereby the person can just walk in and report. Yes, you can actually walk in and report, but just like he said, you know, when she got there, they told her that she had to wait for a lawyer and all those things, because usually when you get there, you have to write statements, and eventually if they are going to take up the person or arrest the person, they may use that statement as evidence if they are prosecuting him, because all these issues are criminal in nature. So you can get a lawyer who would write a petition to the NAPTIP on your behalf, and then you'll be asked to come to the NAPTIP and, you know, make a statement. So that's adopt a petition. So that's basically the procedure. But if you go in there, I believe
they have a VAP section.
Yeah, they have a VAP section
where you could directly walk in and lay out your complaint.
Lay out your complaint. So you can either directly walk into the NAPTIP and lay your complaint, and they'll definitely ask if you have a lawyer, and if you don't have one, maybe they can, you know, try to link you up with non-governmental organizations and all of that.
Yes,
sometimes they even take it up.
Well.
Yes, they even take it up by themselves to look for a pro bono lawyer, or you can approach any lawyer of your choice and see how they can be of help too.
All right, okay, so Zara would go straight to the messages.
This one is from Kings, from Buhari. He says, Happy International Women's Day, but why is several days reserved and dedicated to women alone every year? Is that what is meant by gender equality? Robbing Peter to pay Paul. Even with families, men are worst hit. Children buying all kinds of goodies for their mothers, while Kai and Ogogo are giving to the men to drink, to stupor, and harming their organs.
It's best that I
And harming their organs. Men are actually the victims, but society makes it seem women are the victims. Okay, he's Kings from Mosquito Village, Buhari. And we have from Wale Oguntokun from Lagos. He says, enlightening discussion on domestic violence in a relationship. My take on this is that both the man and woman in a relationship should work and run a living so one is not financially domineering over the other. Secondly, when it starts to get physical or emotionally traumatic, it is time to call it quits with the relationship to avoid imminent death or mental illness. Both the man and woman in a relationship should work and have a living.
Okay, so that's Wale Oguntoku from Lagos. The other guy from Mosquito Village. Barrister Jibola was ready for you, but if not for time, we may have to extend. Okay,
I have to take from Patrick from Newcastle.
Okay.
It's not necessary. He said, good morning. Physical abuse in marriage cannot end in Nigeria's look as the economy is so bad. On a more serious note, I look forward to a world where physical abuse and sexual abuse stop happening. I think more orientation needs to be carried out, especially for kids who saw their dad beat their mom or their mom beat their dad. Some of these children grow up and think it's love to beat one's partner. Secondly, I think the government needs to do more in the economy. Sometimes the man or woman who abuse their partner physically are frustrated by the economy. As a people, we need to do more. A situation, I think I'll stop there.
Exactly. He did essay. He wrote an essay.
Don't blame this economy.
Don't blame him. So, okay, so we're going to end the show with this piece. It's still an abstract from Barrister Jibola's Bello. He said, this means that every person from almost every part of the country can rise against and above the incident of domestic violence. and domestic abuse, that means that it is a collective responsibility. We do not push it on the men, we can't push it on women or governments or CSOs. It's a collective responsibility. So this is where we'll be drawing the curtain for today. Patrick from Nukay, who is the other person from Mosquito Village? Did he put his name there?
Yeah, he did.
And thank you to Wale Oguntokun for your contribution as always.
Kings.
Okay, Kings from Mosquito Village, thank you so much. Then Kimi B, Imotimi Bienfa, thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you everyone, and thank you for coming on
You're
the show.
welcome.
We hope that we'll have you back again some other
No
time
problem.
out of your very busy schedule. You know that this
problem.
was supposed to be done like a month or
about
3
3
weeks
or 4
ago.
I know.
So I know why I was
I'm sorry
stressing on
about
that.
that.
But if you can't come, she can always come around.
Yes, Miriam
Please.
can always come.
Yes,
no problem.
thank you.
No problem.
All right, okay, so this is where
Thank
we'll be
you so
going
much.
right?
Of course.
Yes, so please stand by for Marvelous on radio because the morning show is about to begin full time. Do have a pleasant day and happy International Women's Month.
Thank you. Thank you.